Before I cut the mortises, I've got to determine exactly where they're going to be. So I've laid out one of the stiles and marked off the overall height. For me, in this instance, it's 2005mm. I've laid onto that the rails and then taken the distance from the top rail to the middle rail from my drawing that I've worked out using the golden ratio, and I've got that at 905. So I've laid the middle rail on and the end rail on, and I've got to measure the distance between them, and that'll give me the bottom munting. I know what size the muntings need to be now, and they're going to be fitted into the rails with blind tenons, just short locating tenons of 15mm. So I'm just going to mark those up, and then I shall cut them in exactly the same way as I cut the tenons on the rails, using the same setup on the router table.
Across America by Nancy Griffith from her new album The Loving Kind. You're listening to Weekend Woman's Hour. Now, a couple of weeks ago on the programme we discussed the colour.
With the muntings cut, I can lay those out with the rails and mark off the stiles for the mortises. Doing it like that, I know it's all going to be accurate. Lining up with the marks I've just made, I can go ahead and mark the length of each of the mortises. With the two stiles clamped together, I can mark across to get the second set of mortises bang on in line. And using the rail, other end of the rail, I can mark that haunch in. Doing it this way, I'm not relying on any additional measurements. I'm taking all the marks from what I've actually cut the tenons at, so any discrepancies are all accounted for. Marking out the rails for the blind mortises, avoiding as much measuring as possible. I've got the rails on the bench, lined up good and square. Then with one of the muntings, that'll give me the width that I want it at. One measurement, and then halving it gives me a mark that I can take down, and then using the munting to mark the other side. Then all I have to do is flip it up and take the measurements down. Onto the mortising, and I've just discovered that I can only just fit my 105mm rails into the machine. And I've not got enough depth on the mortising chisel to go all the way through, so I'm going to have to flip it over when I'm on the stiles doing the through mortises. I've set the chisel, made sure it's square with the backstop, and I've set the backstop so it lines up with the tenons that I've cut. So I can now go ahead and do the blind mortise in the thin rail that I've got, the top rail. Just a little bit of cleaning out with a chisel and we've got a good fit. Onto the through mortises that I'm going to have to do from this side, and then I'll have to flip it over to finish them off. Up to the first mark. Along to the other end of the mortise. And I can take out the middle. Now I can flip it over and go in from the other side. Cutting the rest of the mortise out then to take the haunch on the tenon, it's just a matter of setting the depth stop, and I've set it to about 32mm, which is 2mm over what the actual haunch is, giving me a bit of clearance. If we all look down there, you can see it just needs a little bit of cleaning up with a chisel. Cleaning up on these inside faces that I'd cut out with the jigsaw, we get a good sliding fit. Nothing fancy about this next bit. I've got the middle rail and bottom rail. I've got to cut the blind mortises in that take the muntings, and I've got to do it all by hand. Marking it out with the mortise gauge. And cutting a blind mortise. Would have been easier if I'd have got a 5/8 chisel, but I haven't. I've only got a 1/2 inch, so take me a little bit longer. But never mind, here we go. Yes! That will do. Mortise is cut, time for a fitment check, and everything's come together very nicely. Everything good and square, and nice well-fitting mortise and tenons. These would normally be wedged top and bottom, but that means having to shape the mortise with an angle on it that I can't do on the mortising machine. So instead I'm going to be using thin wedges there and there called fox wedges. We're covering that in the next video.